There we go. We've been chatting with Michelle Cox a little early, folks. So I will start over kind of and introduce her to you. Michelle's coming to us from Chicago. I think that's kind of cool. And, we've had people visit with us, but it's just wonderful. We get a little bit different perspective. And she's a celebrated author. She's had a couple of different series that she's been putting out and a standalone book, which, by the way, we're going to ask her to talk about on the 2nd of April when she comes back to us for the local authors book club. Now, how local? I suppose we could say the United States is local, but in any event, we're happy to have you come and talk to us. But tonight, we're going to talk about her writing career and some of the things she's learned and wants to share with us. And so beside that, why don't I just turn it over to you, Michelle, and you can start telling us all about you.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for inviting me. Yeah, as Linda was saying, I'm just going to kind of talk about how I got started in writing and what my journey has been. I'm hoping to leave you guys with some tips and also maybe some things to avoid, just based on my own experience. And if you have questions as we're going along, please, either raise your hand or put it in the chat, and Linda will field it for me. So I guess I was just curious, how many people out there, so obviously you're all writers, and how many of you are already published? I'm just curious. Great, okay, perfect. Okay, well, I'll just start, I guess, at the beginning. So as Linda said, I do have a 7-book mystery romance series. I am starting a new series, which is a spinoff. So book 2 of that will be coming out soon. And I have the standalone novel, The Fallen Woman's Daughter, which just passed its 1-year anniversary. So that was exciting. Okay, so I'm not one of those writers that, always wanted to be a writer as a kid and wrote all these stories and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I guess I did a little bit. I mean, I really loved Louisa May Alcott, and one of my best gifts that I ever got for Christmas was a set of her books. And so I used to try to write, I think what now would be called fan fiction, where I would write all of these stories and Louisa May Alcott and Joe and all of the girls would be in it, and I would be in it too. And I never could finish them. And but I loved being in that sort of world. I spent a lot of time doing that. When I got to high school, I considered it again, but I thought, it just to me sounded too scary to be a writer. And I was also interested in being a doctor. So I thought that becoming a doctor sounded less scary and difficult than being a writer. So I pursued that for 2 years in college, and then I just happened to be taking a Victorian lit class, and it just really spoke to me, and I just finally had that sort of moment of truth where I said, you have to stop running from this. This is really what you want to do. So I switched my major to English. Notice I still didn't have the courage to switch it to creative writing. I just switched it to lit and got an English degree, and then went out into the world. Not a lot of job prospects with an English major. I ended up working in a nursing home, actually, which is where I get a lot of my ideas for my books and my blog, my weekly blog. So anyway, fast forward to 2012, and a chunk of my time was a stay-at-home mom. I had 3 kids, and I did a lot of volunteer work, and was on a lot of different committees and blah blah blah. And my oldest, who was a sophomore in high school at the time, was diagnosed with ADHD. I know it's kind of late in life to get diagnosed, but anyway, so I started reading about ADHD, and I'm like, oh my God, I think something's wrong with the second kid. And I was reading more, and I'm like, oh my God, I think something's wrong with my husband. So anyway, I was like sort of freaked out, and I quit everything. Just it was kind of a knee-jerk thing where I'm like, I just have to focus on these issues. And it really wasn't, I mean, it was difficult, but it wasn't worthy of quitting everything that I was a part of. So after a little bit of time opened up, I'm like, you can either go back to all your volunteer jobs, you could join some new ones, you could get a real job, or you could maybe sit down and write the novel that you always wanted to write. And so 4 different people from 4 different parts of my life just randomly came up to me and said, you should write a book. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to write a book. So I sat down. I didn't know anything about writing a novel. I literally Googled how to write a novel, found like a template and, just started writing. It was really a challenge. The challenge for me was not to get published. The challenge was to see if I could sit in a chair long enough to write a whole novel. So it turns out I could. So it took me about a year. I gave it to my friends and family, and they really loved it. They're like, "Oh, this is great. You should try to publish it." And that really surprised me because I really truly did not write the book to get published. I just wanted to see if I could write a book. And then when people kept encouraging me, I thought, well, I don't know anything about publishing. That would be something I would have to learn. And so I, I thought about it for a really long time, and I thought, you know what? Why not? Why not just see what this is all about? So I started researching, how to get an agent, how to get a book deal, and I submitted to, I think, over 200 agents. I did not get not a single response. So not even a rejection. So I thought, you know what? There's either something wrong with the product, which turns out there was, or there's something wrong with the process. And I was going about it the wrong way too. So I went to a conference in New York, the Writer's Digest conference, and I thought, I'm here to learn. And what surprised me about that trip was that I was so fresh and new and excited, and I just wanted to learn everything there was to know. And the vibe that I was getting was everybody was very, very sour on traditional publishing, that it was very difficult, it was almost impossible. And so that really wasn't what I wanted to hear. So I ended up wandering into a panel about it was called the 3 paths to publishing. And I'm like, oh, the 3 paths, never heard of this. So one was self-publishing, one was hybrid publishing, and one was, what did I say, self first? Traditional, hybrid, and self. So I thought, okay, I've never heard of this hybrid thing. So to me, it was sounding really exciting, and I really, really wanted to do this. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with hybrid publishing, what that is. Yeah. Okay, so you pay an upfront fee. It's not Vanity Press. She Writes Press is the hybrid press that I eventually went with. They only take, I think, 7% of their submissions, so they do vet. You pay an upfront fee. They do your cover, they do some editing, they do all your metadata, they do their big thing is, I think they're one of the few hybrids that have traditional distribution. So our books are we were with Ingram at the time, were sold into bookstores and libraries by an Ingram sales team. And so you got a very finished product. And one of the perks was that you're also part of this community that helps you to kind of learn about publishing, learn about marketing. It's very super supportive. It was great. So I submitted my novel to She Writes Press, and they said, there's no way we can publish this. I'm like, oh no, why? So it was just too gargantuan. So as you know, like a normal novel should be around 80 to 100,000 words. Mine was, I think, 240.
Mm.
So that was probably the reason I was not getting any answers from all the agents I had applied to. So, at the time, again, still didn't know what I was doing. And I tried to argue with them, like, that's going to work. And they're like, no, we're not taking it. So I said, okay, how about this mystery novel that I've been working on? And they're like, well, we'll send it over. They really liked it. And so I signed a contract with them. And that was in 2014. The book came out in 2016. And I did pretty much a book with them every year. I was grandfathered in. When I joined She Writes Press, the cost was pretty low. It has gone up a lot since then. Thankfully, I haven't had to pay that price, but still, it got to be expensive because you have to pay for your print run, you have to pay for shipping, you have to pay for I got to the point where I was unhappy with their editors. I also paid for my own editing. So by the time I got to book five, I was ready to leave. I was still very afraid to leave, but I thought, this is not working. So I approached Brooke Warner, who's the publisher, and I said, I'm, because I own the rights, so you can leave at any time. So we had a long discussion. It's a big, long story, but she convinced me to stay for at least one more book. And I said, well, the last book's already written, or the sixth book is already written, and haven't wrapped up the series. So I'd like to, um, oh, I see Elena's question. Okay. So the series wasn't wrapped up. So I said there has to be one more book. And so anyway, they said, okay, stay for two more books and then you can be on your merry way and we won't try to stop you and all this kind of stuff. So Elena asked what the fear was, right? Um, yeah, I think it was fear of the unknown. So it's kind of like the devil, right? And I thought, oh, I don't know anything about self-publishing. It's going to be so difficult. I'm going to have to learn this whole new, ball game. And what if it doesn't work? What if it, fails? All of that kind of thing. But by the time I was done with the seventh book, I'm like, this is definitely the end for me. So how much were those 5 books selling? That's the thing. I sold a lot of book one as the series went along, it was less and less. So one of the things that She Writes Press hugely encourages you to do is to hire a PR company because their reasoning is that the Ingram sales team is going to put more push behind your books if you have a PR company behind you because they're doing some of the heavy lifting. So you're not forced to, but you're highly, 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 highly encouraged. So I, went with that. I paid thousands of dollars for PR. And yes, they did get me a lot of hits and stuff like that, but I am still paying that money back. So yeah, I sold a lot of books, but not enough to ever make a profit, which is why I wanted to leave because all this time I had been learning about the industry and going to conferences and doing courses and taking webinars and listening to podcasts, all of these things to educate myself. And I finally realized that it's not the only way, but one of the major ways to make money in this industry is to run ads and to do it successfully. So again, I started throwing money at ads stupidly, not really understanding what I was doing. And the key reason that they didn't work is because in order to make ads profitable, you need that daily data. Whereas with She Writes Press, we were treated like a traditional press. We only got our royalty statements 4 times a year. So that's not enough data on a daily basis to make educated decisions about where you're spending money on ads. So yeah, I hope that sort of answers the question about the where the book's selling. So yeah, so in the meantime, while I was working on the series, one of the things that I wanted to do was to try to get a film agent because I have so many readers send me emails saying, when is this going to be on Netflix? And I'm like, "Ah, good question. I'd love to know." So lots and lots of people have said it's a very visual series. They can see it in their mind. It would be a perfect movie. It would be a perfect streaming thing. So I thought, enough people are saying this to me. Maybe I should pursue that. Maybe I should step into that world. So I started investigating that a little bit, and I realized that after taking a couple of, webinars and talking with some people in that whole universe, I realized that that's another whole universe. And the publishing world is a whole universe. And, there's a lot to learn in that one. And I just didn't think that I had the time or the brain power to try to push in both universes. So I thought, I know, I will write a standalone novel that I will pitch to traditional agents. I'll go back to that traditional route so that I can get an agent, get this book traditionally published, and then hopefully, because a lot of those, agencies or the big traditional houses have film connections or film agents that they will set you up with. So I thought, oh, okay, this is kind of my way in. Because also a lot of screenwriters have turned to writing novels because they say a, it's easier to get an option if you have a novel versus a screenplay. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll do it this way. So this is a really long way around to try to get the series in front of somebody. So I wrote this standalone novel, which became The Fallen Woman's Daughter. I had an agent friend that I met at the Historical Novel Society. She was kind of my coach. She's like, I can't take this book, but it needs a lot of editing. And I said, okay, well, up until that point, I didn't have a great editor, which I think really hurt the series now that I know what I know. But I said, okay, you give me an editor. You give me the names of editors that work for the Big Five. And so she did. And I tried out a couple and I finally found the one that I love. And she's great. She used to be an acquiring editor at Knock Doubleday. So she's like, I know what they're looking for. I know how tired they are. I know how many books they have on their desks. So she's like, we'll make this book as commercial as we possibly can. I rewrote it 3 times for her. She helped me put together the package. She had another agent friend who looked at it. She helped me with the comp titles, the query letter, everything. We had what we thought was a perfect package. Sent this out to probably 75 agents at this time. I did get a lot of responses. But everybody said, great writing, love the story, can't sell this book. So I said, okay. Several agents said, if you by chance do not end up with representation and you write something else, contact me first. Another agent said, I can't sell this book, but if you write me a cozy mystery series, I'll represent you. So I'm like, so I thought, okay, I'm done trying to court the traditional world anymore. I'm done trying to get the series in front of a film person. If that happens, it does. I have to just let it go and let it out into the universe. So I decided, okay, this is going to be my self-publishing guinea pig. So I'm going to self-publish this. And I got a lot of very talented people to help me put it together. I had got Kate Quinn to blurb it, which was amazing. And I credit that with a lot of the sales. So I think it was March 3rd or 5th was the 1 year book anniversary. And I'm very proud to say I sold 8,000 copies of that book. So I thought that was a huge achievement for my debut into self-publishing world. I also self-published book one of the Merriweather series, which is a spin-off of um, of the original series, and I did a Christmas novella based on the series. So now that I have three kind of books under my self-publishing belt, I'm going to take the entire series, pull it out of Shiraz Press. Finally, I've been saying this forever, but so as I said, I own the rights. I don't own the covers, and I don't own the interior layout. So I have to get all of those redone, and that's in the process right now. I'm re-editing them a little bit, which is proving to be extremely painful because I'm, you know, a much better writer than I was back in 2012 or 2014 when I wrote that book. So that's tough, but I feel like since I'm republishing them anyway, I just feel like it's worth the work to go through and at least try to tighten it up a little bit. I can't deviate too much. I think Amazon only allows you to change the word count by 10% and still keep all of your reviews, which I have almost 1,500 reviews on for the book one. So I really would love to keep those. So I'm really trying to work within the original structure of the book. So, and I'm also thinking about doing a Kickstarter for each of these. That's kind of the new thing that's out there. I've been learning a lot about it. It's on a lot of podcasts, and it's just a way to not only fund the publishing of the book, and by the way, if any of you are not familiar, it's not asking your friends and family for money. It's actually providing these like, exquisite covers, hardbacks, all these levels of items that you're selling in exchange for pledges. So it's a way to also reach a whole new readership. So anyway, that is in a nutshell, how I got from A to B. So any questions? Anyone? That's a lot of information, sorry. I could also just jump into tips and, go ahead.
What do you credit your success for selling 8,000 copies self-publishing? That is just amazing. What was it, editing or how did you sell the 8,000 copies?
Well, that's a good question. I would say primarily ads. So I've run a lot of Facebook ads. I finally got them to work. And however, I can't seem to get them to work for Match to Merriweather, which is book one of the new series. So I just, I don't know why, but the ad for The Fallen Woman's Daughter is just does amazing. So based on just that ad, I probably sell about 20 books a day, which is a lot. Well, for me. I've also done other things. I mean, I don't use a PR company anymore, obviously, but and that's would be one of my pitfalls. Like advice not to do is not to hire a PR company because I think it's kind of outdated, even for a traditionally published author. I just think there's so much out there that you can do yourself. So yeah, I mean, I also put it on an Instagram. I think I put it on at least two, maybe three Instagram tours where you pay a bookstagrammer, an influencer who has all of these reviewers in her like stable, and you give them a free copy of the book, and then they write a review for it, and feature it on their Instagram page. And lots of these reviewers have literally thousands and thousands of followers. So it's just great to get your book kind of in front of all those, people. They might not buy it right that minute, but what's, the old adage, it's like people have to see something 7 times, or I don't know, 14 times, something like that, and before they buy it. So I think that was really helpful. I have a street team that I use of about 50 people. So they also get a free copy of the ebook, and then they write a review and put it on all the platforms. And then they're supposed to call their local bookstore and ask for them to order it. And they're also supposed to call their local library and ask them to order it as well. So those, I think, are the big things. Pardon?
Who is this that does that?
The book tours on Instagram.
Oh, you give them a free copy? You mean the influencers?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
And
talking about something else after that.
my street team.
Street team, what is that?
So a street team is just a group of people that you recruit. So I did it through my newsletter. I said, oh, I'm starting the street team. This is like probably for book 4. And I didn't know what to expect. Like, would, I get one person or whatever. But I think with that one, I got a pretty good number, maybe 25, which I thought was good. And you could also put it up on Facebook, but I don't know if I would do that because then you're going to get a lot of crazies. But if you have a newsletter, that's the perfect place to say, hey, do you want to be in my street team? And then you send them. I've done it different ways. I mean, I sometimes I have like a private Facebook group, and that didn't work that much for me because I just wasn't there enough. I wasn't attentive enough. But what I do is I do this handwritten card, like, thank you very much. And I put a wax seal on it. And then I do this branded, like I have branded labels of candy bar wrappers, and I put that together and I tie it all up in this really nice package. And then I send it to them. And I used to do print copies, but I can't afford that anymore because now I'm self-published. So it's ebook only, except for some of the people who have been with me from the beginning, and they're maybe a little older, and they're like, my eyesight just can't handle it. So I do send some people a real copy. And send those out, and then just ask them. And then maybe at like Christmas or the holidays, I send them a little special thing just to make them feel like they're part of it. They're part of your team, and they're helping you, because actually they are. And so you kind of want to court them a little bit, and just, treat them special. And a lot of times they'll even post about, oh, I got this card, and I got this candy bar, and something that I wouldn't think matters that much, but it does matter to them. So it's just a nice idea, because kind of going back to what I was saying before, you can sell a lot of books with ads, and that's definitely needs to be part of your structure, but you can't get away from having real interactions with real people, especially with the rise of AI and all of that. They say that the key is going to be having that community around you. So it's kind of a balance, about how much attention you put in each department. One of the things, or one of the tips I was going to say is, in the beginning, I did anything that anybody asked, I did it. Like, it was Indie Author Day, and I just had one book out, and this really fancy bookstore in Lake Forest, which is like this really rich suburb, contacted me, and they said, oh, we want you to be a part of our Indie Author Day. And I'm like, oh, okay, this sounds great. And so I got there, and they're like, yeah, we want you to be the door holder. I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, we want you to hold the door for people coming in, and you can talk to people about your book while they come in the store. And I'm like, okay, like, okay, great, I can do that. So, I mean, I went on anybody's podcast. I didn't care if they had one person or two listeners, because it didn't matter, because I was able to talk about my book, and it gave me a lot of practice talking about my book, and I could put it up on social media saying, hey, I was on this person's podcast, and they don't know if that person has one listener or 10,000. It's just yet another thing that I can post about or that I can put in my newsletter. So in the beginning, whatever came my way, I just did it. People wanted me to do a written interview. I did it. As time has gone along, obviously I've had to get a little bit more choosy because I'm having to juggle, marketing 10 books. But yeah, so that would just be, tip. Anybody have questions, or should I keep going? Oh, Elena.
Yeah, I've got a question for you. So 8,000, that's really, fantastic self-pub. I'm curious if you want to use that and query another standalone with an agent, because that would actually have a fair amount of, that's the kind of number you can tell an agent, I had 8,000. Or do you like the autonomy that you've got and you're not so excited about trying the traditional route again? I mean, it just feels to me like you have a really great way to approach an agent with those kind of numbers.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say at this point, no, only because I too am a little bit soured on the traditional world. I think that it's just because you get an agent doesn't mean that you're going to get your book published, and also it doesn't mean that you're going to make a substantial amount of money, which isn't necessarily what this is about. But I just think that you also don't have as much freedom. You can't run, ads anymore, and it's hard to track your sales. So now that I've kind of stepped foot in this world, I never thought I would say this, but I do really love it. I think it would be very hard for me to want to go to traditional at this point. I would be giving up too much, or not enough surety in return. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
Did you ever do signings in bookstores or anything? Indie books, book people have trouble getting in bookstores. Did you find you did, or?
Yeah, because the She Writes Press books are traditionally distributed, we were in bookstores. So and back in the early days, She Writes Press actually organized book tours for their authors. So it was great. I was in, Book Passage in San Francisco, and I was in a bookstore in LA and different cities around the country. And that was one thing that the PR company was good to have for. But by the second book, I talked to them about book tour or book, signings and stuff like that. And they're like, you know what, we can set that up for you if you want, but they're just, spending your money. You would be much better off setting these up yourself. It's not that hard. So, that's what I started doing, is calling different bookstores and saying, explaining, and all I had to say is my book is available from Ingram Publishing Services, and it was not a problem. However, now I'm self-published, so I've still been able to get into some libraries and bookstores because they already know me. So and because my street team is supposed to be asking for the books to be in the libraries, and that has been really helpful too. So yeah, and I have a local bookstore that I created a relationship with. I'll just try to tell the story quickly. So remember the fancy bookstore in Lake Forest? Originally, my debut launch was supposed to be at that bookstore, but something fell through. I think it was the PR company's fault, to be honest, because they turned out to be nice. But anyway, I panicked. And so I called this little used bookstore in my suburb and I said, is there any way that I can do a launch at your store? And they're like, well, we have no account with Ingram. You would have to bring the books, and we've never done a launch before. Anyway, I ended up doing it. It was great. She was so grateful because I brought in a lot of traffic, and she now has me right inside the door. All of my books are on display permanently. And it opened the door for a lot of other local authors. So now she has a whole local author section, and she'll do a launch for anybody. So it was really really neat experience. And I would encourage all of you to try to have those relationships or make relationships with at least your local bookstore. Another idea that I used to really foster relationships with librarians is I went to a conference in Bellingham out by you guys, the Chanticleer conference, and Anne Charles was there. She's a historical, like, Western writer. She was giving a presentation about what she was calling this library giveaway. So I essentially just copied her idea. So you run this contest. I posted on Facebook and in my newsletter, like, nominate your library to win a free copy of my book. And so the response was overwhelming. I said that I was only going to do 25. I think I ended up doing 100 because I had this huge print run of book 2, which I paid for. And I needed to do something with these books. And so this seemed like the perfect idea, this from Anne Charles. And so people nominate their library. They're very excited about it. And if they get chosen, I chose everybody. If you get chosen, then you mail the book to the person that nominated. They take it into the library. They get a picture with it. You put it in your newsletter and on social media and all this kind of thing. And you hope that they do too. And now your book is permanently in their collection, because she said the trick is to make sure that you sign it saying this book was a donation of your patron, blah, blah, blah. So I got so many letters from librarians all over the country that were so grateful. I'm like, don't they have like a million books? But like, some of them have no budget. Some of them were in a super rural place in the country. So that was another way for me to make those relationships with librarians. And then they went on to buy my the rest of the series. So it was great.
We have a question from Mark. He's just being nosy, he says, and or not to be nosy, but he wonders where you got all the money that you used for all this.
That's a really good question, and I have to say I'm funded by my husband. I mean, that's the truth of it. If I didn't have some expendable cash, I couldn't do this at this level. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's one of those, as you all are, I'm sure, finding out, it's just one of those pay to play industries where it's like you have to. It's kind of like if you're starting a flower shop, you need some money to buy the product and the electricity and advertise. And if you don't have that, it's hard to open a flower shop. But you can do it. It's just on a smaller scale.
Guy Lane asks, do agents pitch smaller traditional publishers or just the big 5 imprints?
I'm sorry, repeat it.
Well, the big 5, do they pitch to other, in other words, smaller traditional publishers like, I don't know, go. I'm a blank right now, and I do. Let me grab one. Eight. Who's this? Oh, I don't know. Those are the big guys. Never mind. But you know, the small publishers, do they try to pitch you to small agents? Do they pitch you to small publishers or just the big five?
Oh, the agents. Usually it's the big five because a lot of the smaller presses, well, not all of them, but a lot of them you don't need an agent. Some of them you do, but a lot of them you don't, because yeah. So no, they usually don't do that I know of, but you know, who knows? Maybe
Oh,
Elena, you're traditionally published, right?
Yeah, I actually responded to the question. Typically, what happens is the agent takes your book out to the big five first. If they don't sell, they're going to look at the Amazon imprints, Thomas and Mercer and all of that. And then if it doesn't sell, they're going to do multiple other rounds because a lot of the smaller presses, Crooked Lane, Ocean View, et cetera, they still either want agent only. A lot of even the smaller presses are now agent only because they were inundated when they were open. Or you can submit without an agent, but you're unlikely to be looked at very closely. So actually, most of the legit smaller publishers, you actually want an agent for anyways.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah. Linda knows I love to answer industry questions.
and that's fine. I appreciate all the help. The one I was trying to think of that I do a lot of is milkweed. There's another one, open something or other, but that a lot of them are specialized. That's the thing about the small presses, Darlene, is because they specialize in particular kinds of books. And so if you happen to write those kinds of books, then your agent may be able to help you there. But if you don't, then they're very selective, because a small press may only put out, let's see, what do I get on average? Maybe they may put out 30 or 40 books a year, small ones, small books, or fewer. But if and the big guys, they've got different editors there, and maybe different editors like to cover different types of books, different genres. And so they have developed this understanding of who's where and what they're looking for. And but I would say, yeah, I'm sure they agents will pitch to a small press if they know it is one that might be interested. They have no reason not to. And as Elena said, they have moved in that direction. I know you were talking earlier about sending out a card to your readers and the people that you were working with. And in the last year, I've started getting cards, thank you cards from the authors that I review, even from the big five. And evidently, because there's so much competition now and there's so much going on in order to get people to buy the hard copies, so they're very supportive. And after I do a review frequently, the publisher will send me a hardback. And so it's like people are starting to do a lot more supporting marketing for themselves. I'm sure that the authors, sometimes they're nice about it and they're like, oh, thank you, somebody understood my book, and like that. But because I'm kind of goofy and evidently they make a mistake and think I understood it. But anyway, they are thankful, but I'm sure the marketing departments at the presses are encouraging them, say, hey, here's one, this is for, this person in Spokane who does this at a bookstore and blah, blah. So send her this nice thing. And they probably have a whole stack of them that they do. Whoever turned in Indie Next reviews for the month gets this nice card from them. So, or maybe I'm the only one that gets one and then they just love me to bits. I don't know. I kind of doubt that one, but Elena's laughing.
You never know.
A lot, Elena.
Well, I love you, Linda.
I know you do. Joan says, how do you get reviews? We're talking about doing some kind of a project with the guild, starting up one where we can try to get more reviewing going because self-pub folks are having trouble getting people to, they'll say, oh yeah, yeah, I'll do a review. You were talking about your street reader, so is that a good way to go?
I think so, because that's kind of an automatic 50 reviews right there. And I don't know if they used to say that it takes 50 reviews on Amazon to get the algorithm moving. I don't know if that's still true, but right there, that's 50 reviews. So I think it kind of starts the ball rolling a little bit. Of course, you can always, if you're in different author groups or Facebook groups, a lot of times people will review for each other. I think one of the problems there is that sometimes Amazon will flag or take your review down if it's not a verified purchase. So sometimes you have to put a disclaimer in there. But yeah, those are all ways that you can try to build some reviews. A lot of the instant, just the Bookstagrammer people, when I first started using them, they were all review based, so they would review. But now I think because they're so inundated as well, if you want a review from them, like a review tour, it's a lot more expensive than if they're just showcasing your book and basically giving the synopsis. So unfortunately, that used to work, but it doesn't work as much now.
I'm interested in your platform. How many people did you end up with? I mean, if you can say this, on your email list that you were contacting when you felt it became successful, it somehow, because somehow you got these 50 people interested. And
Yeah, so at one point I had 30,000 subscribers. So, but I took, several years to build that. But then I decided, just based on like current, wisdom, I decided to cut it down because you're paying for those subscribers every month. That was getting expensive. And also, there's a lot of people on there that aren't opening, and that it's just triggering. So the more people that aren't opening your newsletter, the more it's sending a signal to Google that this is spam.
yeah,
So I really redid my whole, and I didn't put as many links in my newsletter because that is also, I guess, a signal to Google that this is spam. So I sent out a sort of warning email to people that hadn't opened in a long time, like, hey, do you still want to be part of it? Blah, 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 blah. So I cut it down to 13,000, but now it's back up to 23. So I should probably go in and cut it down again. I've tried to stop doing as much, get book one for free if you give me your email. So there's a lot of those platforms like BookFunnel, you can do that, or there's all book sweeps, Crave Books, where you join these different promotions with other authors and you give away a copy of your book in exchange for an email. And I was also running Facebook ads where it just pops right up, where they don't jump to a landing page. Facebook is so sophisticated now where you'll have an ad saying, get this book for free, and it'll pop up, you put in your email, and it immediately directs them to BookFunnel where they can download the book. The problem with that, so some people think that type of marketing really works, and it does in a way, because if you give them book one and then you have a link at the back of the book for them to jump to the next book on Amazon and pay for it, it's a way to get people into your series. And I do think that works to a certain extent, but then there's also the thought that there's so many free books out there right now and so many 99-cent books that people's Kindles are just stuffed with free books. And so people are just grabbing free books and maybe never even reading them. So, there's the thought that, well, I'm going to price my book at where if somebody buys it, they've spent money on it, so that they might be more inclined to read it. So I'm trying to kind of get away from the free book. Give me your email. So that's why it very quickly grows. And I used to run a lot of contests too, where I would do these giveaways and in exchange for an email. So after I culled it down, I get about a 30 to 40% open rate, which I think is pretty good. I've also kind of shifted my newsletter a little bit to not be so much like, oh, about me. That's kind of down at the bottom, but what I have found that seems to be really interesting to people and kind of gets that open rate and it's also on brand, because I write in the 30s and about the 30s and 40s, is I do like 12 secrets about Cary Grant or 12 secrets about Rita Hayworth. And that gets people to open and they seem to enjoy it. So yeah, that was a long answer to the question.
You must be getting tired, y'all. She's about 2 hours later than us where she is, Michelle, you poor thing. I'd be half asleep by
It's
now.
fun.
Good.
Oh, here's a question. Oh, it disappeared. I don't know why my chat is not open.
The chat?
Oh, there we go. New messages.
Okay. I think the last one from Guy Lane.
Oh, okay.
One that is new. Yeah.
Okay, I see it. Yeah. If I were starting from scratch today, what would I do? That's so hard, right? I guess the first thing I would do is try to decide why you're doing this. I wish that I had known that at the beginning. Like, are you doing this because you have a bucket list book and it's the book of your heart and you just want to get it out there? That's a different strategy than if you're really wanting to make this a career and make money out of it. Because, I would maybe do it a little bit differently because you can save yourself so much time and tears and money if you kind of know which path you're going down. But either way, one of the number one things I would do is if at all possible, invest in an editor, a really good editor. So if you only have so much money, that is what I would spend it on. Because it doesn't matter how hard you market your book or how much money you throw at it, if it's not well written and it's not well edited, it's only going to go so far. So that would be my number one tip. And then secondly, I would just start trying to build a newsletter subscriber list, because you own those names. So Facebook or Twitter or any of them can go down at any minute, and you will automatically lose those followers. So they can't be your only platform. If you have your subscribers, those are your people. Those people, you own that list. So I would also try to start doing that. I would try to educate myself as much as possible. And there's so much out there, you guys know this, that there's podcasts and like the Alliance of Independent Authors, and there's always all these subgroups like Sisters in Crime or Historical Novel Society, that you can go to, and it million classes and webinars. And usually the bigger ones, the more well-respected ones, will also have a private Facebook group that you get as part of the course. And that's another great way to bounce things around with people. I've used like some of those, like Self-Publishing Formula. I went to their conference, I listened to their podcast. I joined the Facebook group, and it's great because you can just bounce any ideas off of them. So I think that really educating yourself on how the industry works is really going to be helpful.
Well, this has been great. I think we're running out of time here, for
Okay.
folks that might have a schedule to keep. This has been great. I think
Well, thank you for having me.
Joan has,
Oh, Joan is saying something.
So how did you find a Big Five editor? How do you find somebody like that?
Well, I admit that was kind of a fluke. Because well, here's kind of a tip, is it another, if you have the time or the money, try going to conferences, because this is where you will meet a lot of other authors, other industry people, and where you can ask people, who do you use? Can you recommend anybody? But when I have tried to find people to work on my self-published books, like the cover and the layout and formatting and all of that, I have gone on to Reedsy, and I have been really happy with the people that I have found there. Some people also use Fiverr. I have not used them, but Reedsy is a quite credible, because the cover designer that I use also works for the Big Five, but she freelances on Reedsy. So I think that's significant.
and saying encouraging, inspiring. Thank you for your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
So appreciate that. And I don't know, Tonda, you were kind of raising your hand. Did you have something you were trying to bring up?
Actually, Joan pretty much asked my question because she
Oh,
was saying about an editor being number one. I was going to say, well, what are your qualifications for a good editor?
I think an editor, I mean, not to be discouraging, but I think it's really hard to find an editor. I think that's the hardest thing, because I do feel like it's almost like a marriage, where you have to trust that person enough that you're going to listen to them when they say, take this chapter out, or this character needs to go, or whatever. You have to really believe that that person knows what they're doing. So I think that's really hard to find that person. And I didn't find her at first. I went through a couple of them, and I thought, this person just is not getting the book. They're not understanding what I'm trying to do. So when I finally found my current editor, it just clicked. I knew she knew what I was trying to say, and she was very experienced, very professional, and it just worked. So yeah, so if you guys think of any questions that I didn't answer here, please feel free to reach out to me. I think you have my information, New Cox chapter, or just go through my website, Michelle Cox Writes, and send me a message that way, and I'd be happy to answer anything or happy to help.
or you can show up on the 2nd of April for the book club portion to this series.
Yes.
And, ask some more questions.
Yes, get into it. I love book club discussions, because
Yeah,
I don't have, because you don't have to worry about spoilers, right? Not like
yeah.
a bookstore.
Yeah, we're focusing on the standalone novel, The Fallen Woman's Daughter. And
Yes,
so it's a good book. And I
thank
think
you.
I think you'll like it. And it's a little hard to get still because we can order it in, but it's at Auntie's. But it's a little ways away. It takes a little time. So if you want to read it before the thing on the 2nd, you better hustle buns, get it in. And you can order it. So. And also,
Okay.
if you do, tell them when you order it, say, I need my 15% book club discount, okay? Because you have to tell them that or it doesn't happen. And I can't speak for anywhere else you might buy it. If you go to anywhere else, they're not going to, what book club discount? So anyway, you're on your own there. But thanks so much, Michelle. This was wonderful. Thank you
Yeah,
for recommending her. She's perfect.
thank
Yeah.
you. I hope you got a lot out of it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Enjoyed
Thanks
meeting all of you.
everybody for coming, and we will have this up on YouTube in a few days, and I'll be sending out a notice to let you know, so you can watch it all over again. Okay?
Great. Okay. Bye-bye, guys. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Michelle.
Bye.